So the nestbox project is a little bit of a crazy one. We've been doing it now for about a year. We have 15 nest boxes around Hong Kong Island, and currently this is the first breeding season. 4 of them are being visited. 1 of them has a chick inside, and that is actually hugely successful. Other parrot researchers, they said it'll take several years for the cockatoos to enter something like that. But I guess in Hong Kong we have quite bold and adventurous and adaptable cockatoos. They've adapted to city life, right? And so they were a little bit more willing to go inside this new structure that we've put on trees and actually some buildings as well around Hong Kong. And one case recently we had where we collaborated with the government and Kakadori Farm and Botanic Garden to rescue a baby cockatoo that had been born in a bathroom air vent. The nest that they had made had to be removed, and the baby was being taken care of by Kakadori Farm and Botanic Garden. But they had heard about our nestbox project, and it's always best to return wild birds to the natural environment if possible. So we decided to give it a try, and we put the baby in one of our nest boxes, put it close to where their previous nest had been, and we waited for hours. We were watching the live nest camera footage and we were getting really nervous. Eventually, the cockatoos, the mum and the dad, did poke their head inside and take a look, and they did this beak clicking behavior, which is when they're super happy, and after a few hours they did feed their chick, and they have been feeding him ever since. So we reunited this family, and that, for me, is what conservation is all about. You know, especially for a critically endangered species, every chick is important. During the 80s, Indonesia exported so many yellow-crested cockatoos, over 80,000 in fact, and they went to places like Hong Kong, Singapore, America, Europe for the pet trade. That's actually why now trade in yellow-crested cockatoos is banned, because they were so overexploited for the pet trade during that time that they're now critically endangered, and there's only around 2,000 left in Indonesia. That's also how they arrived in Hong Kong. They can't fly long distances. They didn't go from Indonesia to here, you know, via migration. They just arrived here via the pet trade, and they started to increase in numbers here from the 1960s onwards. So according to the Hong Kong Birdwatching Society records, we see that in the mid-60s there was maybe 10, 20 individuals here, and now we have almost 200. The population has grown from reproduction within the population, but also continual additions of new people's pets that have either escaped because they're very, very smart, or they've been released because they can live for so long. Maybe they outlive their owners. Maybe people realize, oh, I don't want this messy, loud cockatoo in my tiny apartment. I don't know, but they've steadily grown in number, and the population over the last 10 years since we've been monitoring from here at Hong Kong U, we've noticed that it's slightly declining, and we've noticed less and less juveniles in the population. Common misconception, actually, that we have the Australian species here, which is totally understandable because they look very, very similar. They're white, they've got this yellow crest, but the Australian ones are almost twice the size. They have different behaviors and they've got different DNA. They're not from Hong Kong, these cockatoos, right? So what is their impact here in this alien environment? Interestingly, they mostly occur in the city center. They are in Admiralty, they are in Wan Chai, they are in Causeway Bay, Happy Valley, Pok Fu Lam. Mostly they stick to the areas where there is some residential buildings or office buildings. We hypothesize that it's because they are really dependent on the urban parks, like Hong Kong Park and Victoria Park. So I get a lot of comments, oh my God, they're chewing the trees. And to be honest, it looks very dramatic because they will chew off large branches of a tree. But cockatoos and trees have coexisted for centuries in Indonesia and in Australia. and trees do not die from this biting behavior. Knowing that the cockatoos have been in Hong Kong since the 1960s and the trees are still here shows us that even though that looks very damaging and destructive, it's actually something that the trees can cope with, and they maybe even thrive from it. Yeah, the cockatoos in Hong Kong are like immigrants here, and they are also facing a housing crisis, as many people in Hong Kong do. They have fewer and fewer places to nest in because they depend on these holes inside the tree that unfortunately they can't make themselves. They have to find a pre-existing hole from a fallen branch that's left behind or something like that. Those are often removed either by typhoons or by government pruning. I've been very lucky to have them as my study species because everyone loves them. Everyone, if you see them out your window, you know, they'll be doing something hilarious. They've got this little mohawk in places like Sheung Wan, in places like Wan Chai. People can interact with a critically endangered species in a place like Hong Kong. You know, that is a very unique situation. And I wish and I hope that more people will know about this.